If you didn't need me, you'd be gone, he said. I looked him in the eyes and replied, exactly. I thought I'd won. 6 months later, I'm standing in the wreckage of our marriage needing him more than ever and realizing he's truly gone. I'm Carla, 29, and 6 months ago I blew up my marriage with a single word I can't take back. Gavin and I met right after college. He was different back then, confident, ambitious, the kind of guy who knew what he wanted. I guess I was too. We moved fast, got married after 2 years, and settled into our first place together. Things were great at first. We both had decent jobs, split our time between building our careers and enjoying our weekends together. But somewhere around year 3, things shifted. I started getting promoted at work while Gavin seemed stuck in the same position. The more successful I became, the more I started viewing his career choices as lacking. I'd come home from a long day and find him excited about some small win at his job, and I'd barely acknowledge it before launching into my own stories. Looking back, I can see his smile fading a little each time. But back then, I just thought he was being moody. I started canceling our plans whenever my work friends invited me out. Networking opportunities, I called them, even though they were just happy hours where we'd gossip about coworkers. Meanwhile, Gavin would text asking when I'd be home, and I'd get annoyed at what I saw as neediness. Yet the minute he didn't immediately respond to my messages when he was out with his friends, I'd bombard his phone, demanding to know who he was with. The night everything changed started like any other disagreement. I canceled our dinner reservations, the ones he'd made weeks in advance for our anniversary, because my boss invited me to an industry event. When I finally got home around midnight, he was sitting in the dark living room, not even pretending to sleep. "We need to talk about what happened tonight," he said quietly. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, kicking off my heels. "This event was important for my career. You know that. It was our anniversary, Carla. 4 years. We can celebrate this weekend instead," I said, not looking at him. "It's not like the date actually matters." "It matters to me," he said. "Just like it mattered last month when you missed my company party, and the month before when you bailed on dinner with my parents." "Are you seriously keeping score?" I snapped, even though I had a mental tally of every time he'd ever disappointed me over the years, ready to deploy at a moment's notice. "I'm not keeping score. I'm noticing a pattern," he said. That calm, measured tone just irritated me more. "I show up for you. I rearrange my schedule for your events. I listen to your work stories. But you can't do the same for me. Not anymore." "Oh please," I rolled my eyes. "You are being dramatic again." "No, I'm being honest. When was the last time you asked about my day and actually listened to the answer? When was the last time you showed any interest in my life?" I felt my defenses rising. "Don't try to make me feel guilty just because your job isn't as demanding as mine. Some of us have real careers to manage." The hurt that flashed across his face should have been my warning to stop, but instead, I felt a twisted satisfaction. He was always so measured, so reasonable. Making him react felt like winning. "You know what, Carla? I think I finally get it now," he said quietly. "If you didn't need me, you'd be gone." Without missing a beat, I looked him straight in the eyes and said, "Exactly." The word hung in the air between us. I expected him to argue back, to get upset, to try to make me take it back. That's how our fights usually went. He'd press until I shut down the conversation by bringing up how my parents' divorce had left me with trust issues, my trump card whenever I needed him to back off. But this time, something different happened. He just nodded slowly, got up, and walked into our bedroom without another word. I stood there for a minute, waiting for him to come back and continue the fight. But the apartment remained silent. When I finally went to bed, he was lying on his side, awake but not acknowledging me. Fine by me. I thought he'd get over it by morning, like he always did. Except the next day, he didn't mention our fight at all. He made his own breakfast, kissed me on the cheek out of habit, and left for work earlier than usual. I told myself this was a good thing, avoiding the drama of hashing things out again. What I didn't realize then was that something fundamental had shifted. That simple word, exactly, was the beginning of the end. While I was busy convincing myself I'd won that argument, Gavin had finally heard exactly what he needed to hear to start letting go. The next few weeks were weird, but not in a way I could clearly point to. Gavin still did all the things he normally did, made dinner on his nights, paid his share of bills, asked about my day. But something was off. He stopped trying so hard. Those little gestures, picking up my favorite coffee or sending midday texts to check in, just stopped. When I mentioned it, he shrugged and said, "I figured those things didn't matter to you." I convinced myself this was just him being petty, that he'd get over it eventually. Meanwhile, I continued doing what I'd always done. Canceling plans last minute when something better came along. Scrolling through my phone when he talked about his day. Making those little digs about his job that I thought were just honest observations. Why should I change? He was the sensitive one, not me. What I did notice was that he started going to the gym regularly. He reconnected with old college friends I'd always found boring. He signed up for some online course without even mentioning it to me first. I'd come home and find him absorbed in something that had nothing to do with me, and it was infuriating. "Since when do you care about personal finance?" I asked one night, seeing him reviewing investment websites. I've always cared about it, he replied without looking up. You just never asked. That stung, but I brushed it off. Well, while you're playing with your little spreadsheets, don't forget we're supposed to go to my company party next Friday. Actually, I can't make it, he said, finally looking at me. I have plans. I nearly choked. What plans could possibly be more important than my work event? My boss will be there. This is important for my career. I'm meeting with a financial advisor, he said simply. It's been on the calendar for weeks. Well, cancel it, I demanded. He just looked at me for a long moment. No. I'm not doing that. I pulled out all the stops, the silent treatment, tears, bringing up how I'd supported his career even though it wasn't as successful as mine. None of it worked. For the first time, he just let me be upset without trying to fix it. I ended up going to the party alone, telling everyone he was under the weather. I expected him to feel guilty when I came home and dramatically kicked off my heels, sighing about how much my feet hurt. Instead, he was asleep, or pretending to be, and I was the one left fuming in the dark. Looking back, that should have been my wake-up call. But I was too wrapped up in my own narrative to see it. Things came to a head about a month later at dinner with our closest friends, Morgan and Jake. I'd spent the evening doing what I always did, talking over Gavin, making little jokes at his expense, then saying, I'm just teasing. Whenever he didn't laugh along, the conversation turned to work and Gavin mentioned he was up for a promotion. Before he could even finish his sentence, I jumped in. Don't get too excited. It's just a lateral move with a fancy new title, I said with a dismissive wave. Not like they're making him CEO or anything. Usually, our friends would awkwardly laugh along or change the subject. This time, Morgan just stared at me while Jake cleared his throat. Actually, Gavin said in that calm voice that had become his default, it comes with a significant pay increase and a team to manage. But thanks for the clarification, Carla. I felt my face flush. I'm just making sure they don't think you're exaggerating. Why would I exaggerate? He asked, looking directly at me. And why would you assume that's what I was doing? The table went silent. Gavin had never called me out in front of others before. You know what, Jake said, clearly trying to diffuse the tension, I think this calls for a celebration. Congrats, man. The conversation moved on, but I was seething. On the drive home, I unleashed. How dare you embarrass me like that? I was just trying to keep the conversation realistic. No, Gavin said, eyes on the road. You were trying to diminish my achievement because it makes you uncomfortable when good things happen to me. That's ridiculous. Now you're just being oversensitive again. He didn't respond until we were home. As I stomped around the kitchen, slamming cabinet doors for effect, he leaned against the counter and asked, Do you even like me anymore, Carla? The question caught me off guard. What? Of course I do. We're married. That's not what I asked. Do you like me as a person? Because lately, it seems like you don't. I could have taken that moment to reflect, to really think about how I'd been treating him. Instead, I did what I always did, deflected. Oh, so now I need to stroke your ego too? Isn't the promotion enough validation for you? He just shook his head and walked away, leaving me talking to an empty kitchen. That night, he slept in the spare room. I told myself he was being childish, that he'd get over it by morning. He didn't. The next day, coming home from work, I discovered why. Spread across our dining table were financial documents, bank statements, investment accounts, credit card bills, all separated into two piles. What is all this? I asked, dropping my purse on a chair. Gavin looked up from his laptop. I'm organizing our finances. I can see that. Why are they in two separate piles? Because I'm separating our accounts, he said, matter-of-factly. I've talked to a financial advisor about the best way to do it. I felt like the floor dropped out from under me. You're what? Without even discussing it with me first? I've tried discussing our relationship with you for months, he replied, his voice eerily calm. You shut down every conversation by telling me I'm being too sensitive or by bringing up that story about your parents' divorce. Because you are too sensitive. And my parents' divorce is relevant. You know I have trust issues because of that. Your parents' divorce isn't the problem here, Carla. You are. It's your behavior. It's the way you talk to me, the way you dismiss anything that matters to me, the way you expect me to drop everything for you while you can't be bothered to show up for me. I felt my throat tighten. This wasn't how our arguments usually went. Normally, I'd say something hurtful, he'd get upset, I'd bring up my trauma, and then he'd apologize, even though I was the one who started it. This calculated, organized approach wasn't something I knew how to counter. So what, you're leaving me over one little comment at dinner? No, he said, looking directly at me. I'm leaving because of 4 years of little comments. 4 years of double standards. 4 years of being made to feel like I matter less than everyone else in your life. My first instinct was to lash out more. You're being ridiculous. Everyone fights in relationships. If you can't handle normal conflict. This isn't normal conflict, he interrupted. And I'm done pretending it is. Something about his certainty made me panic. For the first time, I realized he might actually be serious. I switched tactics immediately. Gavin, I know I can be difficult sometimes, I said, making my voice small. It's just been so stressful at work lately, and you know how my anxiety gets. Don't, he said quietly. Please don't do that. Do what? Suddenly pretend you're fragile when you've spent years telling me I'm the oversensitive one. It's manipulative, and we both know it. I felt tears spring to my eyes. Real ones this time, not the strategic kind I usually deployed. So that's it? You're just going to throw away our marriage? He sighed, rubbing his temples. I'm not throwing anything away. I'm acknowledging what's already broken. And honestly, Carla, I think you broke it that night when you agreed that if you didn't need me, you'd be gone. That was just something I said during a fight. No, he said, standing up. That was the most honest thing you've ever said to me. And now that I don't need you either, I'm gone. The first week without Gavin was weirdly liberating. I told myself this was actually a good thing. No more walking on eggshells around his sensitive feelings. No more pretending to care about his boring work stories. No more compromising on what restaurant to go to. I went out with my work friends every night, ordered takeout from all the places he hated, and spread my stuff across the entire apartment. That freedom lasted exactly 9 days. Then reality hit like a truck. The bathroom sink started leaking at 2 a.m. I called Gavin without thinking, but it went straight to voicemail. Standing there in my pajamas with water soaking the floor, I realized I had no idea where the shutoff valve was. Gavin had always handled things like that. The next morning, fumbling through a home repair YouTube tutorial with a throbbing headache from lack of sleep, my boss called. The quarterly report I'd been working on had a major error that needed fixing immediately. Usually, I'd dump something like this on Gavin, asking him to pick up dinner, cancel our plans, whatever it took so I could focus on work. Now, I had to handle everything myself. By the end of the second week, I'd racked up a shocking amount on food delivery because I'd never bothered to learn how to cook more than pasta. The apartment was a mess because, as it turned out, Gavin had been quietly handling most of the cleaning. Bills that I thought magically paid themselves were now overdue because he'd always managed them. I started texting him about practical matters. Where's the warranty for the dishwasher? Did we pay the internet bill yet? How do I reset the router? His responses were prompt but brief. Just the facts, without any warmth. No how are you doing or I miss you. Then came Morgan's birthday dinner. I'd been dreading seeing our friends, knowing they'd all been talking about us. When I arrived alone, the pitying looks were unbearable. Where's Gavin? Asked someone who hadn't heard. We're taking some time apart, I said, trying to sound casual. Morgan gave me a strange look. That's not what he said when I talked to him yesterday. My heart jumped. You talked to him? What did he say? That it's not time apart. That it's over. The finality of those words hit me like a physical blow. All this time, I'd been telling myself this was temporary, that eventually he'd realize how much he needed me and come back. But Gavin had moved on. While I was still standing in the wreckage, only now beginning to understand what I'd lost. Later that night, scrolling through my phone to avoid the emptiness of the apartment, I found myself looking at old photos of us. There we were on our honeymoon, his arm around my waist, both of us laughing. When was the last time I'd made him laugh like that? When was the last time I'd even tried? I don't know if it was the wine or the loneliness or some dormant shred of self-awareness, but for the first time, I let myself consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I hadn't been a perfect wife. Maybe I hadn't been as supportive as I thought. Maybe those little jokes at his expense weren't as harmless as I pretended. The realization didn't lead to any grand epiphany or immediate change. I still thought he was overreacting. I still believed relationships were supposed to be hard work, though. Apparently, I expected him to do most of the work. I still thought he should have tried harder to understand my perspective. But a tiny crack had formed in my certainty, and through it seeped uncomfortable questions. Why had I felt the need to diminish his promotion? Why did I get so angry when he started making plans without me? Why was I so quick to dismiss his feelings while demanding he validate mine? I pushed these thoughts aside during the day, throwing myself into work with new intensity. But at night, alone in our apartment, they crept back, along with memories that now had a different tint to them. Like the time he'd spent weeks planning a surprise weekend trip for my birthday, only for me to complain the whole drive there about how I would have chosen a different destination. Or how I'd roll my eyes whenever he talked about his family, but expected him to patiently listen to every drama-filled update about mine. Or the way I'd snap at him for the smallest mistakes, leaving a dish in the sink, forgetting to pick up something from the store, while expecting immediate forgiveness for my own much larger ones. By the third month, my text to him had evolved from practical questions to thinly veiled attempts to reconnect. Remember that restaurant we went to last year? What was it called again? I found your old sweater. Do you want me to drop it off? Each one was an excuse to maintain contact, to remind him I existed. His responses grew shorter, then stopped entirely. The message was clear, but I refused to hear it. Then came the photo. Morgan, who I thought was my friend, sent an email with an attachment, a picture from some mutual friend's wedding. Gavin was in a suit, looking happier than I remembered, standing next to a woman I didn't recognize. The subject line simply read, "Thought you should know." Something inside me snapped. I'd spent months telling myself he'd come crawling back once he realized how good he'd had it with me. Now here he was, moved on, looking happier than he ever had with me. I spent 3 days drafting and leading increasingly desperate messages to him. I Google stalked the woman in the photo, finding her social media accounts and spending hours scrolling through them, looking for flaws, for signs that she wasn't good enough for him. I almost reached out to his mother, whom I barely tolerated when we were together, to try to get her on my side. But what really broke me was finding an old video on my phone, Gavin in our kitchen, dancing ridiculously to some song on the radio, not knowing I was filming. He looked so carefree, so genuinely happy. When was the last time I'd seen that version of him? When was the last time I'd let him be that version of himself around me? I did what any totally rational person would do. I dug up his new address from some mail that was still being delivered to the apartment and drove there unannounced on a Saturday morning. I had a whole speech prepared about how I'd changed, how I understood what went wrong, how we could fix things if he'd just give me another chance. I didn't even make it through the first sentence. "Carla," he said when he opened the door, not looking surprised to see me. "I was wondering when you'd show up. I've been doing a lot of thinking." I started trying to sound appropriately contrite. "I can't do this," he interrupted, not unkindly. "Whatever closure you're looking for, I can't give it to you." "But I've changed," I insisted. "These past few months have been awful without you. I didn't realize how much I needed you." "That's the problem," he said quietly. "You only realized you needed me when I was gone. Not when I was right in front of you, telling you exactly what I needed, not when I was practically begging you to see me as a person worth respecting." I felt tears welling up. "But I do respect you. I always did." He gave me a sad smile. "No, Carla, you didn't. And the fact that you can say that with a straight face shows me nothing has really changed." Just then, a woman appeared behind him, the same one from the photo. She didn't look threatened or territorial, just curious. Gavin touched her arm gently, the kind of instinctive gesture that told me everything I needed to know. "I should go," I said, my prepared speech forgotten. "Take care of yourself, Carla," Gavin said, and I could tell he meant it, which somehow made everything worse. I thought the drive home would be filled with tears, with rage, with desperate plans to win him back. Instead, I felt oddly empty, like I'd been running a race for months only to discover the finish line had never existed at all. Back at the apartment, I poured myself a glass of wine and finally allowed myself to face the truth I'd been avoiding. Gavin hadn't changed. He'd simply stopped accepting my treatment of him. He hadn't become a different person, he just finally started valuing himself the way I should have valued him all along. The most painful realization wasn't that he'd found someone new. It was that he looked genuinely happy with her in a way he hadn't with me for a long time. And why wouldn't he be? She probably listened when he spoke. She probably celebrated his successes instead of diminishing them. She probably treated him with a basic respect I'd convinced myself was unnecessary because we were comfortable with each other. I'd like to tell you this was the moment everything changed for me, that I had some profound epiphany that transformed me into a better person overnight. But life isn't that neat, and neither am I even now. 6 months after he left, part of me still believes I wasn't that bad, that he was too sensitive, that relationships are supposed to be hard work. I still catch myself making the same kinds of cutting remarks to coworkers that I used to make to him. I still have to fight the urge to manipulate situations to get my way. But the rest of me, the part that wakes up at 3 a.m. in an empty apartment, knows the truth. I didn't lose Gavin because he changed or because of one careless word. I lost him because day after day, I showed him exactly who I was, and finally, he believed me. His words echo in my head nearly every day: "If you didn't need me, you'd be gone." And my response exactly: now I need him, need his practical help, his emotional stability, his unwavering support, and he's gone, just like I said he should be. The irony isn't lost on me, neither is the lesson. As much as I try to ignore it, sometimes you don't know what you have until it's gone. Yes. But more importantly, sometimes you don't know who you are until someone finally stops accepting your worst self and walks away. I don't know if I'll ever fully become the kind of person who deserves someone like Gavin. But I do know that whether I change or not, he's never coming back. And that's exactly as it should be.